It takes a second for it to kind of register and start actually going live. I think now we're good. Here we go. Okay, so let me just double check this, but yeah, now we're good. Hi, everybody. My name is Kirsten, and I'm one of the co-founders of Vert.run. With us, we have Pascal Egli, who is a sky runner and Swiss mountain runner, and Max Keith, who's another co-founder of Vert.run. So maybe both of you guys can introduce yourselves. Max, I'll have you start, and then we'll finish up with Pascal, since that's who we'll be talking about.
Yeah, well, thanks for the intro. Yeah, I'm Max Keith, one of the co-founders of Vert.run, and I'm really happy to do this live with one of the most amazing mountain athletes that I know. So I will appreciate for him to take us the time to do this and to learn from the master.
Thanks a lot, Max, for the introduction. That's really kind. I'm Pascal Egli, and I'm a mountain runner, but also PhD student. So I'm trying to juggle the running and studies, work.
So actually, Pascal, totally on that point, I think one thing that we'd like to start out by hearing from you is, I mean, everybody has a lot on their plate. We all have a lot of things to get done. How do you manage it as a PhD candidate with your work? Actually, you could even talk about that a bit because that's really interesting with the glacial work that you're doing. How do you get it all done? How do you balance your training and your work and your PhD candidacy?
Yeah, I have to say it's really not easy because, as everyone knows, if you have like a job or maybe even a family and you want to train everything together, it's always difficult. And I must say, I think I prioritize like by what is most important at the moment. So, for example, in winter I do less competition, so I do maybe a lot of training, but I don't travel so much, and then I work more on the things I have to work. And in summer, I travel more. I do field work on the glacier as well, but I try to kind of do field work, then a race, then field work again, and so on. And there I'm less at the office and I'm traveling more. So it's about, for example, if there's a deadline coming up, like, I don't know, a conference presentation, then obviously I have to prioritize work and I'm just training when I can.
Yeah.
And otherwise, there's periods, of course, in holidays or others where I'm really prioritizing training and trying to get hours in.
I think also, Pascal, a good question or a question that I have is what is your general approach to training? Because everyone kind of has their own vibe. Like some people are really relaxed, and a lot of other people are a lot more disciplined. Where would you say you fall on that scale, and what's your general attitude towards training?
Yeah, I must say my general attitude is also quite relaxed because for me it really has to be fun. Because to become good at it, you need to enjoy it, what you do, and otherwise I don't think you progress as well. So I'm pretty much on the side that, like, if on a day I don't feel so well to do a really hard training, then maybe I do it on the next day or so. But I must say that I have become more professional in my training, also since I have a coach since 2.5 years. Nicolas Lebrun is a pro triathlete. So I've become more strict with like sticking to certain rules. But I must say that for like 10 or 15 years, I've been training just on my own, just as I liked, and I did pretty well like that, yeah.
That's really cool. I mean, for me, that's also really cool to hear because I think you look at someone who has like the amazing results that you do and the power that you do, and you'd be like, no, man, there's no way that this guy ever like takes it easy. Like this guy's probably super strict every day, no matter what. So I mean, I think that's something that you've talked about too, even when you designed your training plan with us, that your first and foremost, your philosophy is like you have to enjoy what you're doing or otherwise the spark isn't there. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Is kind of my philosophy. Yeah.
Max, also, if you have anything to add at any point, just jump in. I'm not sure if there's like a connection delay at all, but just feel free to.
Yeah, like just like in that regard, like let's say now that you are probably, I mean, this is not high season because there is not much racing happening right now at the moment. But this will probably be like the high season for the races, right? So how would you say it's more or less your routine would be for this time of the year, trying to combine a little bit of training, some racing? I don't know, how much do you race during the year or at this time of the year, and also like work or study?
Good question. Yeah, I think in summer it's actually more difficult because exactly as you say, you have a lot of races, so you're not always sure how to train, not to do too much or to get too tired for races, and that's why I also think my coach helped me a lot. Because what my thing is, I think between races you can always train, but you just have to do it easy, and that's one thing. And you can't do as much intensity. The other thing is, maybe I'm not the best example. For example, in year 2018, I did a lot of races. Like in the summer season, from April to October, I did like 11 big races, like sky races, plus like 8 like vertical races. So it was almost 20 races, and I think it was okay, but I think it was on the limit because like a sky race, it still makes your legs really tired, and not just for a week or two. And also the traveling, like I raced in maybe 8 countries, so yeah, it's tiring. So I don't recommend to race that much. I would say, maybe pick out like 5 major events you want to do. And then, then you have plenty of time. You can almost do 1 race every month. That is important, and add a small one close to you to train. Like races for training are very, very efficient. Just a small, even city run or vertical run that you use for the speed. It's like a good speed training. This you can always add, and it doesn't cost much. It's not much travel and stuff. And then you also manage to fit more work in, I guess. But of course, it's nice if you manage to work less in summer, because, as you know, like to sleep enough and recovery is very important for racing. I think sleep is actually quite undervalued. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
What is Max?
Yeah, like maybe.
I was gonna say, Max, what is it that Moy says with the percentages? Like a lot of times, Moy is our other co-founder. He says something like training is only a certain percentage, and people really underestimate that sleep is probably a good 10% of actually your success when it comes to training.
I think so too, because I observed that on myself. Okay, often I don't always get enough sleep, but I try, and I see that if I really slept well for a whole week, like longer nights, 8 to 9 hours, or even more, when I'm on holidays before a race, then I can perform well and I recover fast. It's obvious, and of course, I know if you have kids or so, it's very hard to get maybe enough sleep, or if you have a lot of things to do for a job. But there is if you're disciplined enough with yourself, which I'm not always, like for example with social media and just putting your phone away early enough in the evening, that helps a lot. Because there's a lot of excuses not to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool, because something I noticed, like when we were working and putting your workouts and your training plan into the platform, I really liked this, especially on rest days. You would remind people, like, disconnect from social media, like, stay off your phone. And that stuck out to me, that you thought that was, like, that's so important to you that you put it into your training plan, which I think is really noteworthy.
Yes, I put it because I'm myself not that good at it. Like maybe before I was better, but I also need to improve at that. And yeah, you can save a lot of time for just resting, because being in front of a screen, it's also work for your brain, kind of.
Yeah.
Although you're maybe not at work, but so that's important. And yeah, what else we said? Like, of course, you can have sometimes even a block of races close together, but you can't have that continuously. I see some people, they race every weekend or so, but it's not sustainable for your body. You can do it for maybe a season, but you risk getting injured at some point, because either your tendons or your muscles or something will just not keep up.
Yeah.
And at some point it will break somewhere. I also was injured last year it was maybe an accident, but you never know if something that is already overused leads to an accident. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that what you're talking about, like, so being careful of not over racing, that kind of segues a little bit into another thing I want to talk about, which is, so this year, like, most races are canceled, right? There are still some things happening. And I think for a lot of trail runners, there's sort of this sudden like space where a lot of people don't know how to stay motivated or don't understand like, oh, I should keep training, but for what? So I think something actually really interesting to talk about here is maybe taking this year, 2020, as a chance to learn how to motivate ourselves without having a race. But even more than that, like instead of looking at it as like a temporary thing, like, oh, everything's canceled, let me just get through this and then go back to what I was doing. Maybe that's a skill that we can actually learn is how to maybe not race significantly less, but how can we learn how to motivate ourselves in a way by just enjoying the training process, by getting out in nature, by setting personal goals as a way to make that part of what we do in the future. So maybe for you, can you tell us a little bit about how you're staying motivated this year, what kind of goals you have? I mean, it sounds like maybe you raced kind of a lot last year, so maybe it feels good for you to be more chill. But can you tell us a little bit about how you're staying structured and motivated?
Yeah, that's a cool topic. So I must say, okay, maybe not everyone has the same view, but for me, the point of training is not only racing. I just train because I want to improve myself or see, I want to discover where I can get with my body, with what I have been given. And so for me, it's always training just to improve. And of course, it can be an objective also in the mountains or a race, but it doesn't need to be. But I know that it's not easy for all the people. Like some people, they just need an objective, a race or a summit or something. So yeah, this is definitely the year. Although I have to admit, in Switzerland, we have now quite some races. We're really lucky. Well, there are more local ones, but we have some just limited participants and some strict rules, but we have races. And I need to even see which ones I do, which ones not. But yeah, there's no like international circuit or so. But when I hear what Max said, they're still in confinement in Chile. That's crazy, and we need to really think about how to motivate. Also, if you can mostly just train at home. So in that case, I would really think about also what can I improve in terms of weaknesses. For example, if you're mostly at home, you can improve your balance, your strength, your core. And well, if you're lucky enough, you have a bike at home, you can a spinning bike or even a treadmill to run, then you can of course improve some even intensity training, very specific trainings. You can work on some very specific things that you maybe don't have time in other years.
Yeah.
So that could be a motivation. You can say, I want to, for example, in this interval training, I mean, you can measure your power output and your heart rate. I want to improve. Like, for example, I want to have the same power output but a lower heart rate after 1 month or 2. You can set yourself these kind of goals, which I think is very motivating. If you're very lucky and you have like a running treadmill at home, I don't have one. I must say that for pure uphill running, you can train on a running treadmill. You can get pretty good at uphill running just from the treadmill. But of course, not everyone has that. And yeah, it's not the same technicality, but you can have a very strong base endurance from that. So I think the take home point there is that you need to find yourself small objectives on the way, and then maybe one bigger objective that is a bit further away. Like, okay, when we get out of confinement, I want to do my personal best time on my home peak. And if there's a race end of season or next year, I want to do a better result there. But I agree, it's not easy to, yeah.
Yeah, I think that I loved what you said about training not because of a race or even a personal project, but just for like improving yourself and see what can you achieve or what can you become maybe in the near future. So that's more like an holistic approach to training that I really appreciate, because a lot of people all the time just find motivation to train for a specific goal, but they don't see like the big picture of just wanting to become better, and that usually takes time. Like a lot of people start training for a specific goal, and they realize that this is not magic. This takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and you have to be patient. And it's not like you're gonna go from 0 to 10 in one season, or not even two. It can even take years. And I think you probably know more that than anybody else. But I think it's super cool to hear that training is also a way to get better and see where your limits are. And I think there is no age for that. And it doesn't matter if you are super fit or you are just starting to running. I think if you have that approach to training, it can be way motivating in the end, more than having a specific goal.
I agree. It can be very motivating if you get into this mindset. Maybe it takes some time to get into this mindset, to accept, but because it's also, everything is so relative. If you think, I don't know, I was like vice world champion, but what does it mean? Like next year, maybe there's some other people who are stronger, or there's a different type of race where I'm not as strong, and I would be maybe in the same world champs, maybe 20th or whatever. So yeah, it's much more interesting to try to look at yourself. How can I improve? Because also it can be also quite difficult to always compare to others, because in races you basically compare to others. Or you can also look, okay, I compare to my result last year, but there will always be someone stronger. Unless you maybe called Kylian Jornet, but even he got beaten in some races. So you will always find someone, in certain situation who is stronger.
Yeah, I think kind of what both of you guys are saying. There's also something that we've talked about a lot. A lot with Vert, but also like Moises, our other co-founder, has said. Like he repeats this a lot, which really sticks with me. The idea that like along the lines of what you're saying, shifting our focus. He a lot of times he says about himself like, I don't train for a race. Like he's like, yeah, it's too bad UTMB is canceled this year. But he's like, the whole reason that I train is so that I'm stronger and I can spend more hours or more time out exploring the areas that I like. So I think a lot of it too is about getting back to the foundation of like, okay, none of us were always trail runners, but what is it that first brought us to it? And for a lot of us, it's the feeling that you get when you're on a trail. You feel free, you feel like a kid, you feel good, And I think it's easy to lose that maybe in a competition vibe. But if we sometimes identify what was the thing that first brought us to the sport, and then just reconnect it all, it's like, oh well, this is the reason that I train, is so that I can spend even more time discovering this feeling that I really like,
Exactly. Actually, that's a very important aspect in it. What I appreciate most about, like, if you have a certain fitness, you can get around very far in the mountains, where other people, maybe they need to take a week of holidays, and I do it in one day or so. So you can be much more free with your own body's power. And that's an awesome feeling, right? Because you don't need so much. Of course, you need a pair of shoes and you need spare time. But then you can reach places and feelings that maybe otherwise you couldn't. Yeah. And also that feeling after just a hard training, it can sometimes feel like after a race. So it's awesome.
Yeah, that's really true. Actually, right after you launched your plan with us, you were doing, I have no idea if you had a particular name for it, but you did a project where you were connecting a lot of different summits in one day. Can you tell us about that?
Oh yes, that was it's called Alpstein Total. It's my like home areas, Alpstein in the northeastern Switzerland. And it's just like the limestone pre-Alps, actually similar as in Annecy where you live. Mm-hmm. And I learned climbing there. I also started running there, but I never did like a long loop. And I'm not an ultra runner, so it was kind of new for me. But I just wanted to connect all the main paths and the main important summits in one day. So that was really cool feeling. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it was just a long day out. I didn't like push it like in a competition, but just a long day. Yeah.
That's cool. I like it. No, go ahead, Max.
That's really nice to hear too. That because a lot of people think that when you are out there on the weekends, you need to push the whole time. So it's sometimes it's good to remember that you are out there, of course, and you want to improve yourself and you want to train more. But it's important to just have fun. And maybe the project that you did is the best example of it. It's like you just went out for a long run, and you didn't focus on the pace. You didn't focus on being the faster that you can down the road, but just having an epic day out in your local mountain.
Exactly. Because also one additional thing is if you don't push too much, then in the end you're finished and you're not even too tired or too destroyed. You're like, oh, that was fun. And of course, there's some days where you really want to know it, like how fast, how far can I get and all. But it doesn't need to be many days of the year. And also in a training perspective, a training theory, I mean, you shouldn't do too many hard days because your body simply can't recover from it. So yeah, it can be just spend time out and moving easy for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of the time when people came to the sport and want to start trail running, they get the idea that they have to push hard all the time, and if they don't feel really tired at the end, they basically didn't train. And I'm really against the idea that you need to push hard every day. Of course, not even every week. Sometimes you need to hear your body, and so you're even gaining from just going out at an easy pace or even walking or power hiking. So it's important to have that balance on know when to push and when you can just relax and spend time moving.
Yeah, the walking part is very important, what you said, because many people think maybe if they come from road or track running, you need to be running all the time, but it's not true. I mean, if there's a very steep uphill, almost no one runs. Like even if you look at the sky race, where it's very steep, even the best, they walk because it's simply too steep. And it's the same, even more in training. And I also learned that more from my coach that like you need to stay below a certain heart rate if it's supposed to be an easy training. So you have no other choice than to walk. Even if I can do like a vertical K in 32 minutes, but in that training that is maybe 2 or 3 hours, but very easy. I walk the steep uphills and I walk quite easy, and then I run flat or downhill, or I run if it's not too steep uphill. And it's hard to accept, I understand, for many people because you think, oh, but I'm not running, so slow.
Yeah.
And I'm coaching some athletes and they have the same, some of them, the problem. They're like, oh, but I want to run. And I tell them, yeah, but your heart rate is too high, so you have to walk. So
yeah, like power hiking it's a very important aspect of our sport. Like sky runner races are really kind of, I mean, they are short in the whole aspect of races in compared to ultra running, but they are so steep and technical that, as you mentioned, like not even the best runners can be able to run that stuff. So train how to walk or how to power hike uphill, it's a very crucial aspect if you want to like improve and get yourself better and save some maybe energy, and as you mentioned, get your heart rate a bit lower when you go up. So it's things that you need to have in mind when you train for a very technical and with a lot of elevation gain.
Yes, it's very important. I mean, be it short or long, but if you look at UTMB, I mean, you see that they mostly walk the steep uphills, right? The top guys. Because you can't run uphill for 20 hours, in steep uphill. Yeah. But of course, then there need to be some trainings where you really go hard and fast and you run uphills and also flat speed. But they are very specific. There may be 2 trainings a week where you really go hard, and it's also my training plan like that I designed. You have mostly easy sessions, but then there's like 2 or 3 really hard ones.
Yeah, no, the hard ones are really hard. I can tell.
Yeah. And actually, I like that. Like, I don't know, not everyone likes it, but I like the hard sessions. Sometimes I'm also bored when I have to go slow all the time, and I like
Yeah,
to.
no, I'm pretty sure a lot of people think about that. Like they don't want to go out for just an easy 60 minutes, but they are really looking forward to like doing hills reps or whatever intensity. Maybe now that we are talking about the plan that you designed, I wanted to mention that you put a decent amount of cross training in it. Like I thought that you were maybe like a huge fan of doing like biking or other types of like cross training during the week, so people can maybe not stress out their legs a lot. If you can explain a bit the idea behind it.
Yeah, okay, it's quite a short plan in 5 weeks to try to get in shape. And so I was also concerned about people not getting injured because it's a kind of tough plan, especially if you're maybe intermediate or beginner, or not the most advanced. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that, for example, after a really hard up and down training where you run up and down, you break some muscle fibers and you're maybe sore. You don't run again and then maybe get an injury in your calves or elsewhere. So you bike, and because biking has no impact, and you can always bike actually. Like, yeah, even if you're tired, my coach always says it doesn't. You can always do more. Just do it easy, and on the bike, or you can also jog easy, but better on the bike. Yeah, that was for that, and also to recover after hard sessions. And I also think that it's good to have some variation between sports. I mean, if it was winter, you could even do some skimo instead of bike, because it's also for the mental aspect. If you always run, maybe mentally it's also tiring. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's also a part of what you're talking about, how it has to be fun. Like if you get to a point where you're like, all right, I have to it's almost like even preventing it a little bit sometimes. It's like, all right, you could go out and run every single day, but if your plan already involves, or if your rhythm already involves naturally shaking things up, I think you're maybe less likely to get to the point where you don't have that fun or that spark to keep going.
Yes, exactly. Because then you're looking forward again, right, to training. Oh, now I can run again, or even run fast. Um, so yeah, it's not to get into a slog where, of course, some things repeat. I think I put one session that is pretty much the same after 2 weeks again, like a speed session, because it's also good to have something consistency where you just, let's say, you put.
I think Pascal's frozen. Is he frozen for you too?
Yeah.
He'll come back in a minute. I think it's okay. I'll send him a message and let him know he's frozen. Pascal, you're frozen. Max, have you been since we're talking about cross training, have you been just biking basically this entire time during the lockdown?
The whole time. The whole time. I'm over the trainer now. I don't want to see it anymore.
Have you been doing like strength and core stuff too?
A little bit, but I would say the least amount. I did a bunch of it at the beginning, but now I'm just focusing on the more of a cardio aspect of it.
Let me see if there's a way that I can like take Pascal out. Remove from call. All right, let's try this. Let's see if I take Pascal out and add him back in. Let's see. Max, you're the one who did a lot of the implementing of, oh my goodness, that was did you see the Skype message? It was like Kirsten kicked Pascal out of the call. That is brutal.
Yeah, looks kind of rude.
You're the one who did a lot of the work, like more closely with Pascal's plan and implementing it into the platform. Maybe you can tell us just kind of your overall impressions of his plan while we try to get Pascal back in.
Yeah, well, maybe he put it like a really light. But I would definitely say that Pascal plan is not for the beginners. I personally found it like really challenging. But the good thing is like it is challenging, but at the same time it's really like attainable. Like I mean, if you are really committed to it and you have a bit of background with training, it's something like you could definitely do. And it is also like a short one. Like 6 weeks is it's manageable in terms of like physically and mentally. You are like all weeks you are looking forward to what is coming next, and I think that as you keep this balance that we talk about doing the easy days really easy, or doing the cross training that I prescribe, like taking like really recovery days, and then go really hard on the days that it calls. I think you can take a lot of you can improve a lot in just 6 weeks, because it is so focused on improving your overall ability to go hard, up and down, and overall getting better at moving in technical terrain. So I would say it's one of my favorite ones right now, actually. I can tell, though, that it's really specific, and a lot of people are always kind of thinking about the long term of doing like ultra distances or like doing long races. But I think, and I come to realize this with time, that it is better to nail like this base or like these basics before getting to the longer stuff. So I think for everybody who want to just like kind of take a step back and regain some fitness and maybe becoming an overall stronger runner, it can definitely help you even with the longer stuff later. So overall, I think it's one of the best plans that we have now.
I think something else that, I mean, when Pascal was talking about how for him, I mean, after in Switzerland, their lockdown wasn't that intense, but I mean, for him, he said he's not an ultra runner. He doesn't always do ultra distance stuff. But a couple weeks ago, like right after he launched his plan with us, he went and did this project with summoning all these different peaks in his, and I think it's really cool. We can kind of think of it in a bit of two ways. Pascal says he's going to restart his computer, so he should be back in a minute. I mean, I think it's cool to think of it from Pascal's perspective where, okay, so Pascal's a sky runner. He does like short, steep, technical, intense mountain stuff. He's also an alpinist. For him, his way of finding a challenge for himself in this year was like, okay, let me do something different than I normally do. Let me do something that's more of an ultra distance. So he did that. But I think it also goes both ways. I mean, if someone is normally an ultra runner, a cool way to challenge yourself in this year that's so strange and so different is to be like, okay, well, what if I try to improve my like short, fast, like explosive speed, you know? I mean, I think that's kind of a cool way to look at it too. Maybe Pascal's plan is even a good fit for someone who normally runs ultras and is like, what the heck am I going to do with myself this year? It's like, well, maybe you can try and, I don't know, run your PR or set your local record or whatever on whatever summit you have closest, which I think is kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, no, that's 100% accurate. And that's actually like, I haven't thought about it. And like for all the people that tend to run longer, I guess that eventually you just go flat in terms of like you are all the time running at the same speed, like doing the same stuff, just go for a long run in the mountains. That we know that it can be really fun. But like after some times, you just don't see any improvement. I mean, okay, you can improve your endurance, you can go longer maybe, and improve in nutrition or what you need to move forward in the mountains. But with switching gears, you can see a lot of improvement in really short time.
Yeah, cool. Pascal, we were just talking about how like we thought it was cool that you, who usually do like short, fast, more intense stuff, you decided this year to do something with this project you did in the Hubstein, something like that, in the stuff like around your home area. It was cool that you chose.
It was like a 50K, right?
Yeah, what was it?
It was like 64K, and it was very steep, like 6,000 vertical meters.
Dang.
Yeah, so it's kind of steep. Yeah,
That's
it was
cool.
quite technical, some scrambling always. It was never really runnable.
No, you can tell from the numbers. You can tell.
Yeah.
No way.
So we were talking about like the like crossover, like in between like you being like a more of a specialist in doing shorter explosive ones, but also being able to just go ahead and go for this longer stuff because you of course have the fitness for it, but also you can work the other way around of people, for example, that tend to run ultras, and they get to this point maybe that it's pretty much like flat the whole time, like the whole speed. You don't do much in terms of like intensity. You just go and run at the same pace for the whole training. So switching gears and just trying to focus on improving yourself. Well, maybe not. It doesn't have to be like a month or something. It can be like this one that is 6 weeks. It's nice to change gears and just seeing that you can improve really quickly. So if you have like this pace, and it can be so fun too, like just focusing on different stuff. I think that's the beauty of our sport too, that you can have all these things ranging from like a vertical kilometer, which is less than 5 kilometers, and up to like 100 miles or even 200 miles, and you have like all these infinite possibilities in between.
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing about trail running, right? That it's all called trail running, and it's so different distances and technicalities, and it's true. I just wanted to see how, I hadn't done much of an ultra except, Tromsø Sky Race, but it's not really an ultra, it's just a long sky race. So, I wanted to see how my body reacts on the long distance, and also to show to my coach that I could do well on the long distance. Like, I wasn't sore the next day, so that was good. And because it's very different, if you're just going for speed on a short uphill or less than 2 hours sky race, it's not at all the same things you need to know, right? Because on a long distance, it's more about how you take up food, how you sustain your concentration, a lack of sleep if it's even longer, like 100 milers, and how your like joints support the lots of downhills, and and mostly how the energy, like the fueling, and it's less about the heart, like the motor, the lungs and the heart, right? Cardiovascular system. But I think it can be beneficial. Actually, I was always afraid of, if I do too much long stuff, I get slow. I get slow at the verticals and stuff. But I don't think it must be true. If you maintain some fast trainings and you also do sometimes a really long session or you try ultra, I don't think it needs to make you really slow. Maybe just after the race, of course, but not on the long term necessarily. Of course, maybe it depends on your genetics and your body, all that kind of stuff. But there are several examples of runners who can maintain quite a good speed. Mm. So I think it's interesting to use maybe this period to try new things. Because even if you're ultra runner, you can use some speed. It can be very beneficial to train speed and then to have a different threshold for your longer runs. Yes.
Yeah, I think, Pascal, I have actually just one last question for you, and it's related to that. So you're obviously more experienced with shorter stuff, but you've also done longer projects as well. And what would you say are the different mental challenges that you might find in a shorter race versus something a lot longer? I think for me, it's interesting also to think about maybe someone who normally runs ultras, what could they benefit from in terms of mental strength by practicing their short, kind of like intense trainings?
I think you need to, for short distance, high intensity, you need to sustain quite a high amount of pain, let's say in your muscles or also your lungs or so, but not such a long time. But it's maybe quite painful and to go hard. But you maybe need to like learn how to enjoy this pain. Like last week I did a vertical and it was great. I was going at quite like average 187 heart rate for 45 minutes and it felt great. Although in the end I pushed really into the lactic just to see how it is. But then the other pain, I think in the ultra, I haven't done much, but what people tell me is much more the pain, that you have some sores coming up, like your knees hurt maybe sometimes, and your muscles, you get maybe cramps, and you need to get over it, right? You always have some big downtime. For example, in my project in Alpstein, once after 8 hours, I had really a big drop in my glycogen level, like glucose levels, typical hammer, and then you you need to get out of that again, right? Because you can. That's a cool thing in the ultra. You have time to get through several ups and downs, and there's more the mental strength to believe in that you can get through a tunnel and then get out again, and that you will run okay again, maybe in 1 hour, although now you're very slow. Yeah, I think it's a more maybe more mentally, how do you say, to believe in your strength over a long period. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like the theory where like if you know that you've made it through this thing that's up at level, I don't know, 150 by doing some really short intense trainings where you have to deal with kind of pain on a more intense period, maybe you can apply that same learning to an ultra where maybe you're suffering at an ultra but during an ultra, but you're like, oh, but I know that I made it through this, so okay, mentally I know that I can get past what I'm feeling right now at mile 55 in my race or whatever.
Yes, I think so. You could. Yeah, it's funny because I always thought ultras are so hard and painful, but then a runner I know, she told me, oh, she prefers ultras now, although she would be skilled for verticals too and sky races, because she doesn't like, she's not able to sustain so much pain and push so hard for a short race. And I was like, but it's so short. Compared to what you do, it's like, it's forever you suffer in the ultra, but it's a different kind of suffering, yeah. It's not as intense, but it's... yeah.
Yeah, maybe also the last kind of question or like thing that I would like to know about you. It's like if you do like a range of distance in between like vertical kilometers or like 3 hour sky races on either like this type of projects, which is you would say is your sweet spot right now of races or like duration of races that you like a lot or you feel that you are better at?
Maybe my best for me is around 2 hours. So it's like a short sky race.
It's like a 20K something.
Yeah, like Dolomite sky race, for example, Vert.run, or Coma Pedrosa in the Pyrenees, because there you can still go really quite hard in the uphills and also fast in the downhills. And it's not like a vertical where it's over after 35 minutes or so. But you need some skyrunner skills because you have downhills, but it's not as long that I feel like I have to hold back a bit because otherwise my muscles get tired too early in the race and I can't sustain the intensity until the end. I don't know if you understand what I mean. It's like, for example, Sagama, it's a marathon. It's called a sky race kind of, but for me it's already long. It's like you run 4 hours or even less if you're among the best, and 4 hours it's kind of a long effort already. It's not like you go full out.
No, you need to pace yourself. I mean, if you want to sustain that pace to the end, you need to like restrain yourself a little bit. So, for example, for the kind of races that you mentioned, like the Dolomites or like Coma Pedrosa, which would be like your favorite type of like preparation, like training preparation for it?
For that,
what do you say is your favorite? Yeah, the one that takes up the most.
Yeah, maybe I would say 3 minutes uphill intervals. So, for example, 10 times 3 minutes running in a steep uphill with breaks of like 1.5 minutes. Because, 3 minutes is quite long if you go hard. So, it's pretty hard, but it's very effective.
We're talking like VO2 max intensity, like almost full out?
No, I would say like threshold, like anaerobic threshold.
Yeah.
So, but it's still pretty hard. You can also go more, but I rarely go harder. Yeah.
Perfect. So that's one of the most painful trainings that you do before one of these big races, goal races.
That's one of. But then maybe there's some harder ones. I don't know. Like I put in the training plan like Jimenez, where you do always up and down. So you go up fast and down fast. That's quite fun.
Yeah. I wanted to mention actually that one too, because that is something that at least I haven't seen before in the other training plans that we have. It's like you train both the uphill and the downhill on the same intensity training, and I found that super like the idea. It's really good because basically in a shorter race you need to go to the top really fast, but also you need to be able to push down like right away after the top. So
Yeah.
like doing that on your training. Now that I read it, so of course it's natural, but I haven't thought about it before, and I found it like really interesting.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I have to admit I haven't done it for so long either, but I think it's natural because in a race you do that too. I mean, you don't arrive to the summit, oh, now I go easy down. No, usually
no,
you're
it's
like,
not
oh, now
selfie
I
at the
go
top.
down. Huh?
Not selfie at the top. You go up and then straight down.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my first sky race I ever did, that's why I always talk about it, is Dolomite Sky Race. And there you arrive to the summit, it's 3,100 meters after 1,700 of continuous uphill. And you're pretty tired, but there's nothing else than just going straight and hard down. And it's quite technical in the beginning, so maybe if you feel the altitude or cold or drop in sugar, that you have to be careful about staying focused. But also when there are several uphills, then it changes a lot, I think. When there's several ups and downs, which in many sky races the case, or trail runs, it changes a lot, because if it's just one up and down, then after the downhill you're done. But you have to consider that you can't go full in the first downhill, because otherwise you're on muscles. For the next uphill, they are too tired, and you may get already cramps in the second uphill, or just go slower. So yeah, I think it's important to train that, but not too much downhill speed either, because you can get really tired from that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like not too often, I would say. You should train that.
Yeah, no, your quads definitely feel sore after like a nice downhill training. So
Yeah,
it's better, to do it every once in a while, not too frequently.
yeah, max every week, or not even, because there's also some risk involved if you fall.
Yeah. That's maybe the other thing. Is like when you do these technical races and you want to improve your technical ability to run better at these places, you can go really hard on training because it involves risk some of the time. And of course, there are some times that you may want to try and push hard. It is also too important, and as you mentioned during this plan, it's like you need to leave those risks for the race day, and you don't push that hard on training, because if not, you can just injure yourself or have a fall or whatever. So it's important to remember that.
That's very important. It should never be like racing in the training, because that's only for racing, like that kind of intensity, and it's enough. Like your body has to recover after the race. That's enough load on it, and you shouldn't take that risk or that suffering in the training. And yes, I mean, I see some people, they do really fast downhill sometimes in training, but I think it's not worth the risk. Like, you should just do it for some minutes, faster downhills, and otherwise just easy. But it's tricky to get better at downhills, I agree. I think you need to run downhill a lot to improve over time.
Yeah, and it gets time. All the things, if you want to improve, it takes time and patience, and just putting the work day after day, week after week, month after month.
Cool. I think that's it from us, Pascal. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. It's really nice to actually meet too, kind of like face to face.
Yeah.
While COVID.
Same. Thank you. That was interesting. Yeah.
Cool. And I think that's pretty much it for us. Thank you both. And this is our first live. So this is
cool.
Very exciting. Thank you, Pascal.
Thanks, Pascal. Yeah, thanks for all the input. Like,
Max and Kirsten.
Hopefully we will see each other if we ever get out of this pandemic.
Yes.
No kidding, man.
Then I come to Chile. Okay.
Cool. Thank you so much, guys.
Cool.
Yeah. See you.
Bye.
Bye.